we have the President General of the OWTU, Mr. Ancel Roget. Comrade, how are you?
Yeah, good morning to you, Dr. Tewarie, and good morning to your viewers. I'm good.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you. First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the program. And we'll have a conversation here. It won't just be a question and answer. And we are very interested in your views and your perspectives. And it's very important. You lead an important trade union. It has contributed significantly to the development of workers' interests in this society. The trade union movement is challenged in our time, as so many other institutions, and we're going to talk about some of those things. But let me start in the present. Right now, we are at a point where we are opening up the economy. We started by moving from curbside delivery to basically opening up the retail sector. And many of the state enterprises are semi-open. I don't know if you have them fully out in terms of their employees. And I know that there is some collaboration, some talking between the trade union movement as a movement and the private sector to try to agree on a way forward to help the economy to revive and to recover. Could you talk to me about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, let me thank you, Dr. Tewarie, for the opportunity to share some thoughts and some ideas and experience about the current situation. But it is in the context of how did we get here, and do we have a choice, or are we supposed to be where we are, or could we have been better, notwithstanding the pandemic, the global pandemic situation? And the first thing I want to put on the table this morning is that long before COVID-19 arrived at our shores here in Trinidad and Tobago, the economy was in shambles. The economy, Trinidad and Tobago's economy, was almost at a standstill. Some may argue it was at a standstill at that point. And it is the pandemic, the COVID-19 situation, and all of the consequences around that would have exposed the inherent weakness, the weak underbelly of our economy here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we had a failing energy sector, declining in that sector, decline in the manufacturing sector. Well, agriculture, I think I caught the tail end of what you were saying just now with agriculture. Nothing was happening in agriculture, and now it's less than that. And you had a government whose only mission was really to strangle the citizens by finding ways and means to extract more blood, more tax out of the citizens. And that is how they run an economy. And therefore, the consequence of what I had described prior had to do with thousands and thousands of workers losing their jobs on the breadline with no means to get back to active employment. Now, you put the COVID-19, the global pandemic situation on top of that, and then you would realize where we are in Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, if you are with some people who claim to have all the answers but possess none, and all their attempt is to corruptly extract where they can, enfranchise the people and distract them with all sorts of nonsense, you will have a case for a perfect storm. This is what we have right now. You asked the question about collaboration. Well, the employers and their association private sector and the various chambers and so on, they have seen the wisdom in collaboration with the people who make all possible. And we have been having discussions with the various chambers and their representatives, the Employers Consultative Association, and those discussions are aimed at this question: how do we recuperate, resuscitate, come out of this situation with the least amount of casualty, and with the least amount of casualty meaning the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the workers. Now, when we talk about an economy, Dr. Tewarie, we must stop talking about that economy in abstract. The economy is about the people, yeah? And it is people who drives the economy. But more precisely, it is workers who drives the economy. So you can have all your macro plan, and I'm saying that they have none. But if you don't have workers to implement it in all of the sectors, you don't have an economy. And what we have here is an attempt to remove totally any semblance of a middle class in the society. Remove totally any semblance of proper terms and conditions for workers who perform in various and critical sectors of the economy, and have a mad scramble where you pay little or nothing in an attempt to continue to have the economy going. Now that this prescription just cannot work. And in case anybody did not notice, we have already entered into IMF prescriptions and conditionality being implemented in this country. So you have all of the state sectors who are not totally privatized. The plan is to privatize them. From WASA, to TNTEC, to MP, to TT Post, and all of them under the guise of restructuring, but their main aim is to privatize them. And guess what, Dr. Tewarie? You have as the first and the most vexing consequence of that, workers losing their jobs. How do you account for that? How do you account for all of these workers who previously they were at home, work, but they are now at home? And you are still requesting of them to pay their taxes, and through some sort of crazy idea that they have, that they will find all kinds of penalties to balance their budget. So there's more penalty for different of various infractions. And I'm not now saying that there ought not to be penalty, but the government has lost its focus, if they ever had one in the first place. And we are saying that to be able to come out of this, the government cannot come out of it by themselves. The business community cannot come out of it by themselves. There ought to be collaboration. And I want to, before I take a pause here, I want us to understand and accept that without trade unions and who represent workers and the workers' interests and the country's interests, we will not be going forward at all.
All right, you raised some important points there, and I'm going to follow up on a couple of them. The first point I want to follow up on, do you think, you talk about the, what can I say, the impoverishment of the middle class, you talk about the pressure on workers, you talk about the what you feel are unreasonable taxes. And do you think that it was a premeditated strategy on the part of the government to basically impoverish the country and bring it to its knees? Or do you think that they implemented some bad policies that they didn't anticipate the consequences of, and this is the end result?
I think there was an intention to achieve particular objectives. And those policies implemented are similar to IMF conditionalities. And therefore, the objective to get to those outcomes, they first have to remove what they consider to be impediment. And the impediment, as they see it, are the trade union and the trade union movement. Very, very foolish. And I did hear you mention the President of the United States of America. Now, I just want to, before we go further, recognize this morning what he recognized, that without trade unions, the importance of trade unions and their valued input, which represent the interests of workers, which represent the interests collectively of the economy of the country, without those trade unions and the trade union movement, there will be no going forward. And therefore, there is an attempt, that's the government, this is this PNM government, this present Dr. Rowley PNM government. Is an attempt to decimate the trade union movement, eradicate collective agreement, terms and conditions, all of what we would have fought for, and recognize the significance of those workers who perform in various critical parts of the economy, and reward them through collective bargaining for those performance, because those performance has contributed in the past to the country gaining income for everybody. But theirs is an idea that they should remove all of those collective agreements, contractualize all of the workforce and so on, have everybody scrambling, half of the workforce home or three-quarter home, and they feel that they can achieve their objective with that. Add to that the issue of corruption that is still with us here in this country. So we still have those who are in government enjoying huge contracts with their friends and families and associates and so on, enjoying great benefit from rental arrangements and so on, state rental arrangements, millions of dollars monthly, and that is with your present government and their ministers. So we got to take a holistic approach to how do we go forward while all of these things are happening. And I also want to point to some of the recommendations that they would have received coming from committees that they would have appointed. So they would have appointed a roadmap to recovery committee. And that committee would have made a number of recommendations. But can we say how much of those recommendations are being followed? And I always want to point to objective one. That is two of the recommendations, 4.1 and 4.2. Objective 1 and objective 2, which has to do with social protection, leave no one behind, and objective 2, retain and create jobs. Now, since this government, Dr. Tewarie, let us face the facts, because you see, if we do not accept our current situation, we can't go forward enough. Yeah. We must accept that this country is in chaos, and no amount of hewing and going and hemming and hawing and so on the part of those apologists for this government, no amount of excuses will take us forward. We have to first recognize and accept that we are in crisis, a crisis that was not made by COVID and the pandemic. The COVID and the pandemic only exacerbated it. And therefore, having accepted that, then we will move to the point of how do we come out of that? And I dare say this morning that we cannot come out of that without collaboration at the highest level, involving all. Yeah, and there's where we are right now. And that is why you would have seen, if you were privy to that information, I mentioned it a while ago, that we in the trade union, or the entire trade union movement, recognizing the importance of us going forward, in the absence of government taking this initiative, we would have engaged the employers associations, the trade union movement who don't like to malign, and the various chambers and so on. And we are willing to sit with any or everybody like-minded to be able to put in place a cogent plan to build this economy going forward. Because if we don't do that, we will continue to have the corruption. We will continue to have the citizens being advantaged. We will continue to have more people going home, and we will continue to have them take advantage of the COVID situation, blame everything on COVID, while we cannot see our way out of this.
All
And
right.
therefore, there's where we are at this moment. One point before we go forward. There was a good initiative, and you talk about good policy gone bad or bad policy gone worse. There was a good initiative to form what is a tripartite arrangement, which is the MTAC, National Tripartite Advisory Council. And the labor movement would have gone into that with clean hands, pure hearts, and a willingness to ensure that the country goes forward. But no sooner than later, as we entered into those discussions, Dr. Tewarie, we saw that the government was attempting to use that only for their PR machinery. So we had all of these things occurring that I had described just a while ago. Thousands of workers going home, state enterprises being privatized, absolutely no discussion and so on. The burden of adjustment, the full weight of that burden is placed on the shoulders of workers, working people, and the people in this country. And the government goes along their merry way. And when we raised those issues, there were no response. In fact, they move into high gear and so on. And therefore, we could not stay in that arrangement in a situation where we were supposed to be treated as equals, respected, and offered the opportunity to contribute. Because I want to tell you that all these problems that we're experiencing this morning, the labor movement had and still have an answer to it. And we are not just identifying problems. We had and still have an answer to it. But they paid us no mind because theirs was an intention to take the country in a different direction in the image and likeness of this current PNM government arrangement. Now,
All right.
let me just say that this government, Dr. Tewarie, whether or not there's good intention, there's a lot of ineptness and so on, and a lot of inability to really govern properly in the interest of all.
All right. Well, you've said a lot, and what you said is very potent, and you have been very forthright in your views. And of course, on this show, we let people say what they wish within the realm of responsibility. And you've been responsible so far, and you've expressed your views. But I want to probe some of those things. The first thing is that you are really saying that the government has been on an anti-trade union agenda, and they really do not want the trade union movement to be strong. And secondly, that they want to roll back many of the hard-won gains that the trade union movement has made. All right? Am I correct in interpreting
That's
you
correct.
that way?
That's exactly correct.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
You said that the government has been false in its dealing with the trade union movement, that you, as a movement, were quite prepared to have a stakeholder stance with the government and find a way forward for the country, even in the pre-COVID days with NTAC. But that was used as a sham, and the government went about its business, ignored everything you had to say, used it as a public relation exercise, and therefore you feel betrayed out of that, because I think you left, I think the trade union movement left that particular entity.
Yes. Yes.
And now you said that without government prodding, you engage the private sector because you have an interest in this country, that the private sector understands that there is no business without workers, and that you are prepared as workers' representatives to work with the private sector to get the economy back on its feet. And that is where you are now. And you basically say that you have a way of proceeding to help us out of this crisis, and that you have views about how to take us out of this crisis, and you want the opportunity to present them. I'm going to give you the opportunity to present the way forward from your point of view, because you said that you are prepared for collaboration, but the government doesn't want collaboration.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And I want to make absolutely no mistake or misrepresentation of that. The government does not want collaboration with the trade union movement. But let me just say that, Dr. Tewarie, back in 2016, the labor movement, the entire labor movement, the federation which I have the pride, honor, and privilege to lead at this time, that is the Joint Trade Union Movement, which involved some 17 or 18 trade unions in this country, may I remind all. So it's not just the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, but it is some 17 other trade unions that we have the pride, honor, and privilege to lead. We are involved in this organization called JTOP. And you also had the National Trade Union Center and the Federation of Independent Trade Unions. All three major trade unions in this federation in this country came together and said that, listen, look, government, Labor Economic Alternative Plan, LEAP, this is what we are offering. And not just the plan, but that since we are offering that, let's have a discussion around that. Its implementation, we and our members are prepared to back that in the interest of longevity and sustainability of the country's economy and so on. And therefore, let us mobilize all of the idle resources and so on. All of those billions of dollars that are outside in foreign bank accounts and so on. Let us incentivize the private sector to get involved in putting resources into kickstarting the economy and so on. Let us engage the banking sector, which banking sector, by the way, while we continue to have thousands and thousands of jobs lost in this country, the banking sector continue to what? Make huge profits. So profit is extrapolated from those who are on the dying bed insofar as jobs and sustainability is concerned. And therefore we are saying all of those resources, not just the government, but all of those resources, let us pool them together and begin to identify where our priority are. These are. And the issue of export, the manufacturing sector, ramp up the manufacturing sector, the issue of much talked about, little done across all the administrations, the issue of expanding agriculture. Let us truly deal with agriculture because we continue to have what? Huge food import bill, which only drains our very precious, very scarce foreign exchange, and so on. And let us build a broader economy that would take into account creating foreign exchange rather than trading. You know, and you would have seen what was the response to that. So we begin to close down all our manufacturing capacity, all our export earning capacity. So you have the steel, you have ArcelorMittal being closed down with no help from the government to enter into that discussion to say, hey, listen, we would have given you as a country a lot of resources to have your facility for your steel operation being profitable, one of the most profitable worldwide. And therefore, this is the time, let us engage in some discussion. The government took a hands-off approach. And then you had the Unilever, yeah, closing down. That manufacturing sector has been scaled down and is about, well, it is about to close down right now. And then you had all of the plants in Point Lisas. shutting down one after the other. No, Dr. Tewarie, the ordinary citizens, all of whom are asked to stain their fingers to give people another chance to govern, they ought to understand the nexus with what we are saying and their livelihood. So when you have all of these plants shutting down at point pieces, and the country's ability to earn foreign exchange is seriously curtailed, and you have now a citizen going to the bank for foreign exchange, the US dollar, for whatever reason, medical reasons, child in university, or holiday resort wanting to travel or so, and cannot be a business, business, the manufacturing sector, to expand their capacity here, wanting foreign exchange. All of that is non-existent. And the fact that it is non-existent, it has to do with the government's failed energy policy. So we need to make the nexus with the failure of the government. All of those things we have to accept, and we have to begin to deal with in a radical way. Now you would recall this big charade with the Prime Minister and Minister Stuart Young and deceased former Minister of Energy, God rest his soul, wherever he is. That's all I want to say about him. But you would have seen that trio going to London and negotiating with BP an arrangement which saw the country having to pay more for its own natural gas. And as a result of that failed negotiation, they failed the country. They are not the best negotiators, and they did not take into account the downstream and the value chain that attends the increase in price of gas that we would be paying BP. And BP simply passed that on to NGC, who passed it on to the gas users, and the result is thousands of workers continue to go home, lost of foreign exchange. And may I also say this morning, as I'm presented with the opportunity, we have a very critical situation where there's a shortage of natural gas in this country. Approximately 1 month ago or thereabout, we were told, myself as the President General of the OWTU, representing the Arab workers, we were informed by the management, but they were informed that they have to take one of the two remaining plants offline. They had three. One was taken off before because of what I just explained. But that to further exacerbate their own circumstance, the current circumstance, they were requested by NGC to take another one of those plants off now. Because of what? Shortage of supply of natural gas. So this government is bungling. And then we have the situation with LNG and the train one and so on. And you might very well find that you wake up one morning, if you are comfortable enough to go to sleep, that the economy would totally crash, and so that there will be no feedstock for the earning of foreign exchange. I'm talking here about natural gas, because when you look on the other side, oil production has fallen, regardless of what they say or how they say it. It's just public relations. The figures bears it out, and I think at some point we need to have a full-length discussion into what I'm saying about the energy sector itself, because not enough attention is being paid to the energy sector. Keeping him too, without accountability, the HSF, Heritage and Stabilization Fund, how much of that has been used? Where did that go? Did the government fail? And I did say before, and I dare say now, they failed with their response to the vaccination program and so on. That has fallen apart from the start. Because as we speak, they cannot confirm that there's more than 15% of the population has been properly well vaccinated and so on. And so all of those things we have to face as we climb out of this abyss of destruction that these people have placed us in. But I'm saying that without fear of contradiction or without fear of confrontation, because ours is a responsibility to call it as we see it. But I want to say to those, our critics, that we are not just calling it as we see it. We are immersed in the various sectors where it is happening. So just as I pointed out the situation with Yara, I didn't make that up. We represent members there, workers there, and therefore was the situation a couple of weeks ago. Ours is the hope that by some magical way, because they're not listening, ours is the hope that by some magical way we can come out of this. But there's no magical formula. We have to have collaboration. And that is why all of those things and more, the suffering of the man on the street, Dr. Tewarie, when we have carried this conversation on, it must not be in abstract or devoid of the concerns of those people in the street. Our hospital, our healthcare system is in shambles. Look how long they take to open. It took a pandemic for them to open the Kuva Hospital. It took a pandemic. And so the capacity of that to be able to provide proper health care, the citizens were denied that because of political reasons and so on. And there is where we are.
All right.
Now,
Now,
LEAP, Labour Economic Alternative Plan, and a full-length discussion on the various aspects of it. How do we mobilize all of those resources and so on? How do we have a coming together and pulling from all those who have in their foreign bank accounts and so on, the banking sector, the credit union movement and so on, all of the people's organizations and so on, to invest in the country's future going forward. And those resources will be able to kickstart in a meaningful way the economy and not focus on the narrow vision of taxing and strangling the population.
all right. We now I've given you full opportunity to present your point of view, but we are coming now to the 8 o'clock news and the end of the program, so I'm going to have only a short time. But I want to get some short answers to what I'm going to ask you, okay? First of all, you are saying the trade union movement and your trade union want to collaborate and cooperate, not to confront.
That's right.
That is the position that you are taking. Secondly, you want to be engaged in an economic discussion about the future of the country.
That's right.
And you want that to be done as a trade union movement.
Yes.
All right. And thirdly, though, you are saying that you are criticizing the state for its role in the economy, and you are criticizing a lot of things about the government, including bad policies, bad faith, and corruption. But you are also saying you are not for any kind of privatization. How do you justify that? And you have to give me a short answer. Eh? Before you go, one of the things the Prime Minister said, I had an interview with him, he said that he offered the trade union an opportunity for employee share ownership in the state sector, and the unions did not see that as desirable. So tell me, what is your position on that kind of shareholder ownership by workers and on privatization generally? What is your objection? Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I don't know that there has been any offering of share ownership and so on. Share ownership in various state entities is different from privatization. So that I have a share, just more than a stake, but a share now in this particular operation. I can be represented at the highest level of the board and determine how and what they do to earn, increase their earning capacity. That's different from one attempt to sell out and to privatize.
Just let me get this one. Just take a minute. He used two examples. He said in the case of FCB, shares were offered, but workers did not, the union did not want it. And he pointed out, look how well off those workers would have been now, given what has happened to the shares. And then he said in Paria, the OWTU was offered an opportunity to participate economically through shares, and you did not take it up.
Let me say, Dr. Tewarie, let me just say, because we hardly have time,
Yeah.
that is categorically, that is a lie.
That is not true.
Is not true. And it's
Okay.
not the first lie that would have been told by the Prime Minister. And I say this without apology or without fear. That is a lie. And you remember, if in case you didn't listen, the government is not closing down Petrotrin. Okay, that categorically is a lie. The Petrotrin situation is one that we should find some time to deal with its entirety, because that Petrotrin story contributes enormously to the downfall of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, because we continue to expend scarce foreign exchange to purchase fuel to energize the motoring public in this country, and we gain nothing from it. So we sell back for TT what we paid for in exchange for. So it's a great drain, and that's their model of how they would progress with the former Petrotrin. That what they have done to Petrotrin is an abject failure, and
All
it's
right.
the union would have collaborated and decided, listen, we agree that everything is wrong. A lot of things are wrong with Petrotrin. Let's, by agreement, restructure Petrotrin in the interest of the country. One man get vexed, and he shut down Petrotrin, and the country is now paying dearly for that. What the Prime Minister said about Paria, to answer your question again, is an outright lie. We were not offered. Similar to the charade that they would have taken us through with respect to the acquisition of both Paria and the refinery and so on, which acquisition today would have seen the country benefiting had they gone that route. But it's all about friends, family, and a botched and failed economic plan for this country.
Do you have any chance whatsoever, and this is the last discussion, last question, do you have any chance whatsoever of engaging the government again in the hope of the OWTU gaining control with partners in the refinery?
Well, we would always hope that they would wake up and understand that without the workers and without the union's input and all of the research and all of the work that would have gone into that already, we are ready to go. So one would always hope. But at this current time, with what is happening, all I would want to say about that this morning is that we are examining all our options, not excluding legal options.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You said you wanted to talk about the Petrotrin issue, and I would try to make that possible so we can have a discussion on that, because we would like to hear from the union's perspective what actually happened and how they see it. So at least you could have that view on the table along with the views of government, the views of the opposition, the views of alternative sectors, etc. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation. Hopefully we'll have another one and we will pursue some of the issues. And we've got a break now for the news. Thank you very much, Comrade Roget.
September the 1st, Freedom Day.